Good evening. My name is Paul Barrett. That was Mandarin. My wife's not here, but she's been working on me. Please let me remind you to turn off your smartphones and your dumb phones. All your phones. Out of courtesy for the speakers tonight. I welcome you to our fourth Executive in Residence program this academic year. With the college's mission of preparing students to be tomorrow's citizen leaders, what better way to help us accomplish this mission than to bring to campus some of the most effective values-based leaders in the world. Tonight's guest speakers are truly global business consultants and leaders who are making a difference in the world of finance, and we all can feel very fortunate to have them with us this evening. The Executive in Residence series began in 1991 and continues to be a terrific addition to our curriculum. With the theme of this year's series, Competitive Leadership Values, we will be learning more about how American organizations provide valued leadership across the globe. In this regard, tonight's speakers will address leadership values in the world of finance. Sponsored by Barrett Capital Management and Eagle Fire, the Executive Residence Series features distinguished and influential business leaders sharing their experiences and insights on economics, finance, corporate responsibilities, including the protection of organizational assets, including the human capital that spans international boundaries. When I think of our speakers this evening, I am reminded of the remarks made by Warren Buffett, the great American investor. Mr. Buffett said, and I quote, "Only buy something that you'd be perfectly happy to hold if the market shut down for 10 years. But the real question is this, just how do we find out enough about a company to be able to determine if we would be happy to buy stock in it and hold it in such odd economic conditions?" Our speakers tonight are in the business of collecting, analyzing, and communicating information to answer this very question. Hurrah! I'm thinking this would be a good time to get ready to take some notes. Our speakers will be up in just a minute. Tonight's guest speakers are special for us at Longwood. They are a father-daughter team with a direct connection to our institution as an alum and parent of an alum. With the energy that each brings to tonight's events, though, I challenge you to figure out which one is which. In addition, our speakers tonight represent an amazing example of executives who have clearly embraced the power of an idea and how entrepreneurial innovation can create a career, or it can create a market, and in doing so change lives and communities for the better. I thank our speakers in advance for sharing their story with us this evening. But before our speakers are introduced, I'd like to recognize a few people, including the financial sponsors for tonight's program. Please stand. From Barrett Capital Management, we have the CEO, David Barrett, and from Eagle Fire, the Mid-Atlantic Area Manager, Corey Nichols. I'd also like to recognize, you don't need to stand, although even sitting down, you're taller than I am. The president of Longwood University, President Taylor Reevely, is with us this evening. I'd also like to recognize the Student Sponsoring Association for tonight's event. Will the members of the Lancer Student Investment Fund please stand? One of the best asset management groups, except for one, in this room. Thank you, members. Finally, it's my pleasure to present to you the individual who will actually introduce our speakers. Mr. Charles Gregorski is a senior standout from Chesapeake, Virginia, who will be completing the Bachelor of Science in Economics degree in just a couple months. As the manager of the Lancer Student Investment Fund, he has been working hard to manage the activities of this association and his commitments to the Dean Student Advisory Board and his role as a tutor of economics for his fellow students. He demonstrates research skills here at Longwood and maintains an overall GPA of 3.26. With tremendous leadership skills already showing up in everything he does, please join me in welcoming to the podium Mr. Charles Gregorski.
those kind words, Dean Barrett. Good evening, everyone. Just this little bit. Tonight, Longwood University is proud to welcome back one of our alumna. She was a model student during her time here, and she was part of 3 National Honor Societies. She graduated cum laude from Longwood in 2006 with a concentration in British literature. Furthermore, this alum kicked off her career with CNBC at an internship during the summer of 2009 while completing her graduate studies in journalism and mass communication at the University of Kansas, where she also earned cum laude honors. Her hard work has surely paid off. She has earned the title of senior line producer for CNBC's Fast Money, her current position, just 3 years since accepting her first full-time position with the media giant. We are also joined this evening by one of the finance world's most visible figures. This guest's highly sought-after opinion has been in print for over 27 years as the Gartman Letter, of which he is the editor and publisher. Most impressively, he has never missed a single daily publication in all 27 years that the letter has been in print. He has lectured on capital market creation to central banks and finance ministries across the globe and makes frequent appearances on CNBC and Bloomberg TV. Now, without further ado, we give you the father-daughter duo, Mr. Dennis Gartman and Miss Courtney Gartman.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, everyone. My name is Courtney Gartman, senior line producer for CNBC's Fast Money. That was quite the introduction, so I hope I can live up to how you introduced me. Making it in the world of business finance. First, I'd kind of like to start off with how I almost didn't make it in the world of business finance. I too, not too long ago, 2006, was sitting in these very same seats, an undergraduate student looking to get my Bachelor's of Arts in English, focusing on British literature, and excited about it. Always knew I loved to read and write. Graduation day came way faster than I wanted it to. Not enough spring weekends in my life. Came super fast, and upon graduation, I began to ponder what my next step was going to be. Where was I going to go? What was I going to do? What was my next move? You can be in school for those 4 years and it can totally rush by you, and then when you graduate and you have your degree, it's the sudden reality of not knowing where to go next or what your next move is going to be. It hits you very, very, very quickly, like a ton of bricks, and it's scary. Felt a little lost for a moment, was happy, that I did have what I had, that I had my Bachelor's of Arts, that I came from a nice school, but felt lost with where I wanted to go next. Did I lose this? No, good. Okay. Felt lost with where I wanted to go next and, was a little confused, moved back home, not really knowing what my next move was going to be. Thought I'd like to make a lot of money, who wouldn't? Maybe I should sit for my LSATs and see how that goes. So I did. Tough test, didn't do so hot. The scores weren't so great. Got even further down on myself and was kind of back to square one. Where am I going to go next? What's my next move? How do I make this work for me? Talked to mom and dad, picked their brain, asked, what's your advice? Where do I go? I'm holding this Bachelor of Arts. I tried for my LSATs. It didn't work for me. What is my next move? I need your help. I need your direction. I need a sense of how I'm going to become me. And what mom and dad said was, Court, you should focus on what your strong qualities are. For me, that's reading, writing, maybe a little bit of speaking. Not so much math. Go figure, I now work in financial news. But reading and writing, they were always my strong points. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and started to think, where can I take this? How can I use this to become a better me? How do I set myself apart from everyone else and become successful? Putting 2 and 2 together, I started to think that maybe going to journalism school or applying or trying to even get my foot in the door would be my right path. Sat for my GREs. Long story short, it's a lot easier than your LSATs. Did okay, applied to several schools, got into some, got waitlisted on some, got flat out rejected from some. One of those schools happened to be the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, and flew out with my father to go take a look at it. Was thinking, Kansas, what the heck is in Kansas? A, it's gonna be freezing cold. What's out there? What is in it for me, a young girl coming from Chesapeake, Virginia? Is this gonna be the right place? We went together, and I fell in love with the school. I liked it from the bat, minus the freezing cold weather. I felt like it was going to be a good fit. Short 2-year program. I'd graduate with my master's in journalism, and then I wouldn't feel like I was on the search for how to find success again. Perhaps after I got that MA, that would be where I could finally find myself. Well, in doing so, you must have an internship. You cannot go out into the real world with your MA without having an internship, which, in retrospect, is a fantastic way to go about things, because that internship can be the very key to your success. I had searched and searched and searched, upon the ending of my 2 years, and was looking for how to find a program or how to get my foot in the door. I was going for my MA, my Master's of Journalism, so I could take that any way I wanted. Maybe it would be sports writing. Maybe it would be general assignment writing. Perhaps, covering the local fire down the street. I didn't really know where my sense of direction was going to come from. I just knew I needed to do something and to make it happen with some sort of internship. I applied to several places. I emailed lots of sources. No one was responding to me. I kind of felt like I was going right back to that circle of feeling a little lost and not knowing where my next move was. So I sucked up my pride, which was a bit of a hard thing to do. And I asked the one guy who I knew had been on TV a few times, had done a little bit of TV, but it was tough for me to do so because I knew I needed to rely on my dad to help me get my foot in the door at a firm, at a place to try and get an internship. I wanted to do it myself. I did not want to rely on family. I wanted to do it myself. That was a huge thing for me. But I had tried, and I had tried, and I had tried, and it wasn't working. So I emailed him, Dad, and said, can you help me? Can you set me up with an interview with someone at CNBC? Just please, can you help me? He, being a dad, said, sure, Court. I'll see if I can shoot an email to Mary, who was the executive producer of the time of Fast Money and the Fast Money Halftime Report, which is your 12 to 1 p.m. intraday market show, and Fast Money, your 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. after-market wrap-up. He said, I'll get you an email. You take it from there, but I'll get you an email. So we did, and they flew me out to New York, which was very exciting, a little scary, but exciting, for an interview. And I was shaking and nervous and didn't know how to sell myself because I didn't have that securities industry know-how. I didn't know the terminology. What is an earnings release? What was high yield? What the heck are junk bonds? Who cares about Lloyd Blankfein? Who are these people? I didn't know. But I went on the interview. Mary, very short, sweet, concisely, said, you know what? We'll give it a try. So, after graduation, got my master's, flew out to New York, moved into about a box this size, paid way too much money for it. In New York, they have what they call one-bedroom apartments that are actually put up with fake walls. So you hire a company to come install a fake wall, and you put a whole bunch of people in that one little apartment, and you try and make it for yourself, which I did. Went for the internship, came in every morning feeling confused, scared, not knowing what my next move was going to be, or if I was ever going to be able to find my voice and say, I have something to say about this topic, or I can talk about rising rates and what that might mean for banks, because I didn't know. I don't have that securities industry background. That was new for me. So those 3 months came and went very, very, very fast. And what that meant for me was each night when I went home, my daily taskings when I was there was the life of an intern. I went to Starbucks 1,500,000 times. I shuffled anchors to the makeup room, booked cab services and black car services, and printed an awful lot of scripts. I got really good at printing scripts, fantastically good at printing scripts. But at nighttime, when I was home in my little apartment with a whole heck of a lot of other people, I brought the FT, Financial Times, with me. I brought the Wall Street Journal. I brought Market Watch. Brought all kinds of blogs. What else? Read a bunch of Twitter feeds and did a whole heck of a lot of homework on my own, reading and reading and reading and reading and trying to digest the terminology that was going on around me all day at work that I did not know about. What my dad likes to say is that I studied for my MBA on my own time. And it's true, I did. Because with CNBC and with the people that I was up against, so many MBA grads who were coming in as interns from Princeton, from Yale, from Harvard. Here I am from KU and Longwood. Love these schools. They were great to me. Look at where I am now. But I knew I had the world stacked up against me when I am this person coming in next to Princetons and Harvards and Yales. So I took that, and I took that home with me every single night with my stack of papers, my pink paper, the FT, highlighting, trying to figure out what the heck an earnings release was and what does guidance mean on a stock, and learning and Googling and searching and reading and reading and reading on my own to try and be able to bring something to the table in our morning editorial meetings. 3 months, an internship. Finally, by the 3rd month, I got enough kahunas to bring an idea to the table. I had this fantastic idea about executive compensation on Jamie Dimon versus Lloyd Blankfein and what the difference between the two were. How does JP Morgan stack up against the all-knowing god of Goldman Sachs? I had a great idea. I brought it to the table, and Mary, my executive producer, simply goes, no. So, my tail tucked between my legs, I went home that night and searched and searched and read and tried to come back the next day with something else. I had finally gotten enough confidence to bring a topic for our morning editorial meeting up on my own. It was rejected very, very, very quickly. But at least I knew, okay, I've done this. I've passed the hard part. I can do this again. The next day, I did. No. Okay. All right, Mary. I can play this game. Next week, a week after that first initial rejection, she said, you know what, Court? That's a great idea. Let's put that on the show tonight. That was it? I did it? So from that, I got to chase down the guest, develop a contact. That guest that I booked that day then became my friend on the phone. We spoke. He got to hear my voice. I got to hear his. He was a source of information for me. He became a source of my story. We put him on the show that night as a guest, mic'd him up. He got to be all nice and pretty, sitting next to Melissa Lee and the traders. And from then on, we developed a bit of a rapport over email, which in turn also expanded my Rolodex even further. On Wall Street, your Rolodex is your calling card. It is my everything. I haven't been there that long, but it's a pretty sexy Rolodex now. So that, for me, has been fantastic. But it started with that simple guest booking that I was sure Mary was going to cut down and say, no way. Bad idea. Positive. From that, I've received many, many, many more guests, which is so nice to, if I was talking moments ago in the other room, I don't know what backwardation of crude oil and the contango means. Sorry, Dad, I don't. It's too much for me. But it's so nice to be able to reach out to one of those sources and say, hey, it's Court. I have a question on this story that's in the WSJ. Can you put this in layman's terms for me? And someone will, which means that other someone possibly becomes a contact. And then I develop another source, and my Rolodex gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Christmas parties on Wall Street. Fantastic way to get your name out there. Bring your business cards with you. Shake hands. People love to put a face with a name. I've been trying to book Jamie Dimon on our show since before I got there, probably. Never once has his assistant, who probably has their own assistant, who probably has their own assistant, who probably has their own assistant, ever responded to me. He's never picked up my phone calls. They've never emailed me back. But I keep trying. I'm not going to stop. One day, he's going to be on the show, and it's going to be a fantastic interview. Keep trying. You guys have the advantage of social media now, which is something that I didn't quite have when I first came into the game. Being a reporter, working for business news, Twitter is one of the most amazing places to search for information. It's a constant news feed of stories that are breaking all the time. You have, a reporter from the FT who's talking about, China and interest rates and what that might mean over here and emerging markets and how the fear over there is going to weigh into our markets here. Okay, so I can direct message that reporter from the FT and say, hey, what are your thoughts on such and such? Or would you like to come on the show tonight? Most likely, they're going to say no. But he'll respond to me, and that also develops another source. Being able to say it's a down day and, the Dow is completely flat, S&P's flat, market is doing nothing. Fed day was 2 weeks ago, stocks are doing nothing, it's so boring. We have an hour of TV to put on the air that night. The heck are we going to talk about? I can simply send out a tweet and say, hey guys, from the CNBC Fast Money account, what would you like to talk about tonight? And get 26,000 responses about specific stock stories. Does someone want to hear about Google and how they're going to report their next earnings release? Are they going to miss? Are they going to beat? How do we trade it? Do we buy the dip? Things like that I wouldn't think to put in on days when the news is boring. You guys create stories for me to put on the air. The way that we put the show together on a daily basis is, it is fast money, so it's very day of. There are other shows on the network, Squawk Box for one, which is our 6 a.m. show. It's more of a talking at each other conversation piece. Fast, very different. It's very day of, very stock driven. What are the hot stories of the day? Did Tesla catch on fire again? What's Elon Musk doing with Solar City? Apple's out with their Q3 report next week. Who's buying? Carl Icahn, did he send another email to eBay? Akron and his Herbalife short, what's happening? It's very, very, very day of. We don't put that show together until our morning meeting, which is at 8 a.m. Consists of myself, my 8 teammates, and it is a big circle of ideas. I come to the table with several of the ideas from the readings I've done that morning, be it from the FT, the WSJ, Market Watch, wherever, Twitter. They come to the table with several ideas. I was talking in a class earlier today. One of my students brought to the table yesterday this company called Mobley. What the heck is Mobley? I've never heard of it. It apparently is the company that is just like Instagram, but in emerging markets. How would I ever know of something like that? But because he is young, has all kinds of ideas that I wasn't reading or thinking of, we form a compromise of ideas, and that's how we put our show together. Our meetings at 8, we're usually done by 9, and we have about a rough draft of how the show's gonna go. It's an A through a G block. A block, commercial break for 2:45. B block, commercial break, 2:45. C block, commercial break, 2:45. Sometimes, but this is what I love about it, that show that we put together and that is pristine, beautiful, guests are ready to go, the decos, which is the text copy that runs across the bottom of the screen, are gorgeous, immaculate. The copy is all checked. Melissa, my anchor, loves it. She's giving me the thumbs up, which never happens. It's all ready to go. We go live at 5. At 4:55 p.m., news breaks. Obama's going to make a speech on Ukraine. That whole show, killed, thrown out the window. We're breaking news mode, killing all the commercial breaks, trying to find guests on the fly. Who can phone in? Where's Dad? It's It's things fly out the window and you kind of have to be on your toes, but I lean on my teammates who can help me in a bind. I'm the one who gets to wear the headset and talks to my anchor the whole way through the show. I kind of lead her to where she's going next. What she's reading is everything that I've written. Where she's going to, who she's tossing to. If it's a breaking news situation, she has to have her full trust in me. She doesn't know where we're going to next. That rundown we put together has been completely killed. She has no clue. So for me to say, Mel, Eamon Jabbers, breaking news, DC Bureau, she has to trust me and go to him. There's no prompter anymore. We are playing clean and free, off-air, crazy, breaking news. But it feels good because I know that's coming from me. I don't think I could ever be the person in the front of that camera, but behind it is good. And I wouldn't have been able to get to that spot had I not have been accountable for knowing what I didn't know, which was all this terminology that I had to take on myself at home, and knowing that I needed to lean on my teammates to back me up and help me with ideas, and knowing that I needed to lean on contacts to get my foot in the door and then take it times 10 by myself, on my own, and focus and work and read and drive ahead and do what I thought I needed to do to get ahead of everyone else who came from Princeton, who came from Harvard, who came from Yale. I was hungry for that success, and that hunger left 5 p.m., 6 p.m. when we left the building. It came back to apartment 38F with 5 other people in there. And it got me to where I am now, and I feel like that is a good place. So without further ado, the real guy you came to listen to. Thank you.
That was good. That was really good. I've never heard my daughter speak before. I was much impressed. My name is Dennis Gartman, and I'm a trader. And I would go back to undergraduate school in the University of Akron for career day, and I would tell them years ago, my name's Dennis Gartman, I'm a trader. And there would invariably be somebody in the audience saying, cool, can you make any money selling America's secrets to other people? And I'd have to tell them, no, it's T-R-A-D-E-R, not T-R-A-I-T-O-R. And over the course of the past 35 years, I'm now convinced that T-R-A-I-T-O-R is a safer and easier way to make a living. Before I came here today, picked Courtney up at the airport this morning, but I left my lovely bride of the last 23 years at home. And I said, sweetheart, did you ever imagine that I'd be doing TV, get interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, doing a seminar at Longwood College, picking Courtney up? In your wildest dreams, did you ever think that would happen? And she looked at me and said, we've been married 23 years. It's been a long time since you've been in my wildest dreams. Which I thought was a bit harsh, but sadly it's probably quite true. I was a floor trader at the Chicago Board of Trade. Great place to make a living. I lied to Harris Bank in 1977 when I bought my seat. All of us did back in those days. The seat cost me $125,000, which in 1977 was a lot of money. But I wanted to, having come out of graduate work in the early 1970s, having gone to work for Cotton Incorporated, Cotton keeps America feeling comfortable, having been an economist for them, having gone to work for a bank, trading foreign exchange, trading financial instrument futures, I really wanted to go and do it on my own. So I lied to Harris Bank. We all did, as I said, and they lent me enough money because the seats were going up in value faster than you could probably lose money, so Harris Bank thought it was probably a pretty good trade, and went down to the floor of the Board of Trade. Those of you who are so young, you don't see many floor traders nowadays, but back in those days it was a very cool thing to be, was a floor trader. It was the closest thing in Chicago to being a rock star. When you walked into a bar and you had your trading jacket on, it was pretty cool. And to show you what it was like down there, though, the fellow who stood to the right of me, they call it the pit. You worked in the pit. I traded in the bond pit. And the fellow who stood next to me, Brian O'Doherty, played defensive tackle for my beloved North Carolina State, which is where I went to graduate school. Brian was 6 feet 7 inches tall, 295 pounds, and as he's yelling and screaming, trading, he basically black and blued the right side of my ribs in. The fellow who stood to the left of me was bigger than was Brian. He black and blued the left side of my ribs in, and as I like to say, the fellow who stood behind me, John Ott, was a spitter. So it was really a very bad place to work. I'll give you an example of how silly the floor is, because people want to know, what does the floor think? And I'm always amused that people want to know, what does the floor think? The floor doesn't think. Okay? The dumbest people I've ever met were floor traders. The best floor traders there were the dumbest guys. All the floor wants to think about is it 6-bit, is it 7? Is it a 6-bit, is it a 7? That's all the floor thinks about. But we used to think that Goldman Sachs was the smartest group on the floor. And to show you how silly the floor can be, this is back in the late 1970s. We thought Goldman Sachs had a faster line to the Fed than anybody else did. And we only were taught, as a floor trader in the bond pit, the only thing you knew for certain is if the Fed did matched sales, bonds went down. That was all you knew as a floor trader. Fed's doing matched sales, bonds go down. Okay? And floor traders love to see things go down. Stuff goes down in price faster than stuff comes up. So we're watching one day, and it's 10:15, and this is the time back in those days when the Fed would come in and either do match sales or repos to add or subtract reserves from the system. And we're all trading in the pit, and we're all having our heads turned watching the fellow from Goldman Sachs. And he's on the phone, and he's got the phone to his ear. The Fed's coming in. It's going to be cool. And the guy says, matches? And we heard the magic words, matches. Sell bonds at 30, sell them at 29, sell them at 28, sell them at 25. And the bond market's crashing and we're getting rich and it's selling at 20 and we've broken it down to 18 and the bond market's falling. And the guy on the phone says, I don't have any matches. We can't even smoke down here. Oh my God. 30 for it. Pay 40 to get it back. We all got broke. What was interesting was that the Wall Street Journal the next day was trying to explain why the bond market fell midday. What does the floor think? The floor doesn't think. It was amusing. I spoke to a class this afternoon, and I'm supposed to talk about investments and that sort of thing. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told the class today. Write this down. Here's the most important thing anybody will ever tell you about the world of investment. Do more of the things that have been working and try your damnedest to do less of the things that have not. If you do that in life, guys, if taking flowers to your girlfriend gets you lucky more often, take her flowers on a more consistent. Do more of the things that have been working and less of the things that have not. Most of us, however, do more of the things that have not been working and less of the things that do. If you buy a stock at 50 and it goes to 45, why are you buying more? You're wrong. You're wrong because you're losing money. And if it goes to 40, why are you buying more? You're wrong. And why are you doing more things that are wrong? And if it goes to 35, why are you buying more? Because that's what most people do. It had value at 50. It must have more value at 40. No, it doesn't. You're poorer than you were. Somebody knows something you don't know. If you buy something at 50 and it goes to 55, buy more. Why? Because you're right. Because you're richer now. Because the market's saying that what you thought is the correct thing to be doing. It's amusing to me. The average professional trader, and I'm a pro, I make good money trading. The average pro probably loses 70 to 80% of the trades that he does. He probably loses money on 70 to 80% of the trades that he does. The average amateur probably makes money on 70 to 80% of the trades that he or she does. And the pro will win every time. Why? Because the pro will take a 1% loss, and a 1% loss, and a 2% loss, and a 1% loss, and a 2% loss, and then a 400% profit. The amateur, on the other hand, here's the axiom: you never grow broke taking a profit, and he takes a 1% profit, and a 2% profit, and a 3% profit, and a 1% profit, and loses 90% on the last trade. When I got remarried 23 years ago, we sat down, my wife, the accountant, and accountants, they have it tough in this business because they actually believe that 1 + 2 = 3. In the world of trading, it doesn't always work out that way because we're human beings and we make mistakes and we're dealing with irrational news that comes at us, and we are irrational individuals and we make rational decisions and irrational decisions on a consistent basis. And it was amusing to her that the first year, I had a good year trading. I lost on 70% of the trades that I put on. My lovely bride, the woman who said, "It's been 23 years since you've been in my wildest dreams," looked at me and said, "You're not very good at this, are you? You lost on 70% of the trades you put on. You can't even beat a coin toss." I said, "Sweetheart, just stick with me. I think I can do better." The next year we sat down, my wife, the accountant. She said, "This is very sad. You did better this year. You made more money trading this year than you made the previous year, but this year you lost 81% of the time. 81% of the trades you put on this year, you lost money on. And you promised me you were going to get better, and you're getting worse." I said, "Sweetheart, just bear with me. I think I can do better." Third year, had a better year than the previous 2 years. My loss ratio was up to 87%. Fourth year, I had a great year. And my wife figured it out. She said, "I think I got it now. If you can just be wrong 98% of the time, we're going to get stinking rich." I'm trying. I said, "I think I can do that. I think I can be wrong 97% of the time. Just bear with me." The point being that you are going to make mistakes. Just make them small. And when you make them, admit them, cover them, get out, forget them, and try to do something else. That's what the great traders, that's what the great speculators, that's what the great investors do. They know they're going to lose a lot. They also know that when they're holding on to a losing trade, they understand the concept that there's two types of capital with which you are dealing. You're dealing with the real capital that's in your account, and you're dealing with mental capital. You're dealing with the ability, when you're losing money, you are going to hemorrhage mental capital. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up holding on to that bad trade, and you're going to get rid of all your good ones because you're going to defend the bad one because you thought it had value, and it'll continue to go against you and go against you and go against you. And now you've lost money, and now you've lost mental capital. I always like to tell the story about how far things can go. I was telling this to the class this afternoon. In 1974, when inflation was raging, commodities were the hottest thing in the world. And there was a great story I tell about sugar prices at $1.25 a pound. And the entire Cuban crop was going to be destroyed in a hurricane. And the crops of sugar beets in Montana and Wyoming were going to be destroyed. And inflation was going to take sugar from $1.25 to $1.50. And if you were trading futures, you could make a lot of money. And it was there, and you knew you had to do it, so you bought 2 contracts of sugar at $1.25. And invariably, it went to $1.10. And the average person said, "Well, it was worth the $1.25 a week and a half ago. Now it's $1.10. It's still good. The fundamentals are still there. The Cuban crop is going to get wiped out. We're having trouble in Montana and Wyoming. Inflation is raging. If I buy 2 more contracts here at $1.10, if it just goes back to $1.17, I'll break even," which is nice, till it went to $1. But the fundamentals probably haven't changed at this point. The Cuban crop is probably still going to get wiped out. They are indeed having troubles with the crops in Montana and Wyoming. Inflation is still raging. If I just buy 2 more contracts here at $1, if it goes back to $1.07, I'll break even, which is nice, till it went to 50 cents. Well, the fundamentals are beginning to change a little bit, but now you're so deeply into the trade, you've lost mental capital, you've lost real capital. Now you've got to buy 10 contracts because now it's got to get back to about 80 cents to break even, and it was $1.25 only a year ago. It probably can get back there. If I just buy 10 contracts here, I'll break even, which is nice, till sugar went to 30 cents a pound. Now you got to buy 20 contracts because if it just gets back to 50 cents, I can break even, which is nice. Till it went to 10 cents a pound, till it went to 5 cents a pound, till it went to 3 cents a pound, 2 cents a pound, 1 cent a pound. It went so cheap that people actually took delivery of the sugar futures contracts in 1975, because back then you got sugar delivered in 100-pound burlap sacks. People took delivery of the sugar futures contract, went to the river in New York City, cut the burlap sacks open, dumped the sugar into the river, and sold the burlap, because it was worth more than what was in it, which was nice, until there was an oversupply of burlap. The point being, you have no idea how far down can be once down gets going. I showed kids this afternoon the chart of Nortel, which was once the biggest stock in Canada. It was once 35% of the Toronto Stock Exchange Index. It was the telephone company of Canada. And you can't hold a chart of that, of Nortel, as it went from $125 a share to $95, to $55, to $45, to $35, to $25, to $5, and to $1. And it stayed there for a long time. A chart of sugar in '74, a chart of Nortel in 2007 and 8 you can't tell the difference between them. And people lost fortunes. So if you just followed the simple rule, do more of the things that are working and try your best to do less of the things that are not. That is the best investment advice anybody will ever give you. And you have it free. I break my own rules all the time. And every time I do, it costs me. Except for the times that the gods want to teach me a lesson, because the gods in trading are the same gods that are in the golf game. The gods in golf make you try to hit shots you're not capable of hitting, and the gods in trading make you do the same thing. The gods in trading will trick you, because once in a while you'll try to buy something that has gone down, break your own rule, it'll bounce back, you think you're really smart, and it's just the gods coaxing you into trying it one more time. Because this time, they're really going to lay the wood to you. Let's talk about what's going on out there. Now that that's enough about, that's graduate work in finance. That's all you need to know. That will suffice. That will make you a genius. That will make you the best investor the world has ever seen. Now we'll talk about what I think is going on. Fracking. Fracking has changed America. It's changing the world completely. I would make speeches like this before, and I would ask the audience in the past, a mere 2 and 3 years ago, who's the United States' largest supplier of crude oil? It's a trick question, because even then, we were the largest supplier of crude for ourselves. Most people thought they heard who was the United States' largest supplier. They thought they heard who was the United States' largest supplier of crude oil from abroad. And 5 years ago, unanimously, people in the audience would say, well, it's Saudi Arabia. And I'd have to say, no. And this would stun people. This would shock people. But it's always been Canada. It's always been Canada. Been our biggest supplier of crude oil. Our greatest ally. It's amazing most Americans don't even know anything about our greatest friend, our largest trading partner. You can take our trade with Germany, our trade with Saudi Arabia, our trade with England, our trade with Japan, aggregate it, double it, and it's not our trade with Canada. But most Americans don't know that, but that's another story for another time. Canada was our largest exporter. They sent us more crude oil. Number 2 has been Mexico. Number 3 has been Venezuela. Number 4 has been Angola. The Saudis now are down in 4th and 5th place on a consistent basis. We get almost no crude oil from the Middle East. And in another 2 years, because of fracking, and don't let the eco-radicals tell you anything other than this, this is the best thing that's happening to the United States. We are, in another year and a half, maybe 2 at the outside, going to be absolutely net exporters of energy. This is changing America. Energy and demographics drive everything. And for the first time in my lifetime, and you're going to spend, all of you students are going to spend the rest of your lifetime, you will have forgotten in 30 years that at one time the United States was a net importer, because for the next 30 years the United States is going to be a net exporter of energy to the rest of the world. Think about what that does to our balance of trade. We've always had an imbalance of trade because of energy. We are going to start running balance of trade surpluses, because we are now finding energy every single day in places we didn't even know existed. The amazing thing is the change in technology in energy. When we used to drill, we used to think our geologists had a good view down 5,000 and 10,000 feet underground, and we used to think that oil formations and natural gas formations were rather finite and rather well defined. Now we have this thing called seismic technology, which we can take a picture of what the ground looks like 15, 17, 20,000 feet underground, and now we know that no, those pools of energy are not finitely shaped, but they look like your hand with fingers that extend for miles outward. And you know what's really cool? Now not only do we know that these things look this way and that there's oil in those fingertips that extend for miles out into the distance, but now we can send our soda straws, our drills down into the ground. 5 years ago, our hit rates used to be 50%. Now our hit rates are 95% because of technology. And now we send our drilling wells down into the middle of that palm, and we have flexi straws that can go out into the fingertips and are sucking crude oil from areas that we couldn't have touched a mere 5 years ago. It's amazing what's happening out there. It's astonishing. It's changing America. It makes me so powerfully bullish for the United States, because we're going to be net exporters of energy. Or think about agriculture and the change that has come over agriculture in the last 25 years. You know you don't hear the story about agriculture and how much we've changed it. All you hear about is from the eco-radicals who get upset about our farmers and worry about fertilizer runoff into the Mississippi, and that we might be destroying the Gulf of Mexico. We don't do that anymore. In the past, when we fertilized for corn, if you're a large farmer out in Iowa and you're farming 15,000 acres, and that's not that large a farm, there's a lot of people who do it. Once you put the corn in the ground, you really haven't the faintest idea what that corn looks like a quarter of a mile out there in the distance. You didn't know that. You looked at the corn along the sides and you fertilized according to what your corn looked like on the sides of your crop. Now, we have satellites in the air that look down on that corn crop. And they're sending you, as you're driving through the field applying fertilizer to that field, it tells you for the next 15 feet, increase the amount of nitrogen, decrease the amount of phosphorus, change how you're fertilizing for the next 15 feet. It's telling you as you're driving through the field. Now we fertilize to perfection. It's amazing. 40 years ago, if you were a corn farmer in the United States, if you got 120, 130, 140 bushels per acre of corn, you were a magnificent corn farmer. Now, if you don't get 165, you're average. And if you don't do 225 bushels per acre, you're really not that good at all. Agriculture has changed so dramatically. We're feeding everybody these days. It's funny, we're going to have to change the language. We can't even talk about amber waves of grain anymore. Why? Because in the old days, wheat crop was that tall. And it was beautiful if you drove out to Kansas in May and June just before they harvested, and when the wind hit the wheat crop, and it would wave. It was beautiful. But why in God's name would you want to raise a stalk that tall that the wind can blow down, that hail can damage, when all you're really after is the kernel up here? That's what you want. Now our wheat crop, it's that tall. Can you imagine? We're growing so much more wheat because we've genetically modified the crop to make it better. Cotton. We now grow cotton that has color in it. It's not white anymore. We grow red cotton. Why? How many times, all of you, you're college freshmen and juniors, how many times did you do your laundry the first time? threw your white underwear into the machine, threw a red shirt into the machine, and for the rest of the year you wore pink underwear. We all did it because number 2 red dye didn't hold in cotton very well. Now with new colored cotton, genetically modified cotton, it holds the dye. It's amazing. These are the things that should make you so excited about living in the United States. We lead the world in this stuff. Nobody comes close. And you should applaud that. You should pay attention to that fact. So I leave you with the notion that things are getting better. They really are. 2007, 2008, 2009, how do I want to say this? They sucked. Okay, that's a very sophisticated economic term. But that was before fracking. That was before a lot of these changes that are taking place. And we're seeing it every single day. I wish I were 23 years old again, because the next 40 years are going to be so astonishing. Living in a period of time when the first time, because of the internet, allows the sharing of wisdom instantaneously around the world. In the past, wisdom stuck over here, and wisdom stayed over here, and wisdom was over here, and wisdom didn't talk to one another. Now wisdom talks to one another. Man, you're lucky. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. As my old friend Paul Tudor Jones says, trading and investing is like falling in love. You put your arms around that idea and you hold her tight until she shows you the first sign of disrespect. Then you throw her overboard and disavow any association whatsoever. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Thank you for your time. Good luck. What a future you guys have ahead of you. Man, I wish I were 23 years old. Now, if there's questions, I'd love to try to answer one or two. But thank you for your time.
Same for me. Questions for me as well. Love to answer them.
She's got the coolest job in the whole world. Carl Icahn returns her phone calls. He won't return mine. Yeah?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. That's always the toughest thing, is to be the first person to break the ice. Thank you.
Have either of y'all ever thought about teaching a university course, a class?
He has.
I lecture a fair amount, but I would prefer not. I wouldn't do it. I can't. I know. I can't take the pay cut.
Tough answer. Yeah, I think I would love to. It's nice connecting with the students. We share a common bond. We're close in age. It's refreshing to see their faces and to want to be 20 and 21 again. Yeah, I would love to. I think it would be a great experience for me. Just the interaction alone and knowing where you guys want to go. I would love to.
I have a question for the audience. Can anybody tell me the score of the NC State-Miami game?
It's very important.
Pardon? It's halftime? I can't hear you.
NC State is up by 4.
Yes! We'll lose. Yeah, we'll lose. We'll do something. Carolina will do. We're not even playing them, and they'll still do something to us. Yeah. Any other questions?
So Dennis, you talked about what makes you optimistic.
Yeah.
When you wake up 2 in the morning and you're worried,
What makes me pessimistic?
what scares you?
I'll tell you what scares me. Thanks, Ray. That's a good question. I'll tell you what scares me. And 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been scared of this, but now I'm scared of it. When a group of still unknowns attacked an important electricity station out in California and were able to bring it down, that scares me. I am worried that was a test. I'm not worried about terrorism in the United States anymore. I'm worried about a terrorist attack upon the power grid, because we depend upon electricity. And if you can attack one substation as they did with machine guns and bring it down, and it didn't get covered. It had no coverage whatsoever, but it succeeded. You brought one down, the power grid can cover for one substation going down. It can't cover for 7. It can't cover for 5. So if I worry about something, that's what I worry about. I don't worry about terrorist attacks here in the country anymore. I worry about substation circumstances. That's what I worry about. And it struck home this morning because when I got up at 12:30 to write the newsletter, right about 1:05, all of our electricity went down for just 30 seconds. It never did that before. Came right back up, but I got to tell you, I thought, uh-oh, what happened? But it came right back up, and clearly it was the wind that had occurred and the temperature change that had gone through. Okay? But that's what I worry about. I'll tell you what I don't worry about. I don't worry about global warming. I don't worry about that at all.
How about governmental debt? Are you worried about that?
You know, I'm not as worried about governmental debt as let me start the answer to that by saying I'm somewhat to the right of Genghis Khan politically. So you need to, if you understand that, I'm a staunch libertarian, and most of my fellows on the right wake up at night and constantly are dismayed by the level of government debt. I'm not as concerned about it as everybody else is, because when you look at the balance sheet of the United States, we do our balance sheet different than anybody else does. For example, an aircraft carrier. What's an aircraft carrier cost? Let's call it $15 billion to build one. You got 125 aircraft on there. Call it $250 million for each one of those. When you send an aircraft carrier out to sea, you send it out with 16 attendant ships. Let's throw another $50 billion on there. Let's round the whole thing off and say you got 150 or $200 billion in one aircraft carrier. We got 11 of them, which is a good thing to have. France has one. It doesn't work. Okay. The Chinese have one that they bought from Ukraine. Okay. I'm just saying. Okay. And as it used to be said, the President of the United States wakes up every morning and asks, where are my aircraft carriers? I think that's wrong. I think the President of Russia wakes up every morning and says, where are America's aircraft carriers? That being said, do you know what we carry our aircraft carriers on the balance sheet of the United States as? Zero. Nothing. Japan has a wonderful military. Nobody talks about it, but Japan has like probably the second or third best military. They carry their equipment on their balance sheet. We carry ours for nothing. I'm amused, for example, that we carry Yosemite National Park on our balance sheet for $1. I'll pay $4 right now. Okay? The point being, from a balance sheet perspective, I think we're under-indebted, not over-indebted. Now, that's pressing the point a long way, but if I have... what we do have is a terrible spending problem, okay? My biggest fear in the country, this is my biggest fear, is that the way we try to accommodate a spending problem is by raising taxes. That's what we try to do. History shows that every time that, I shouldn't say every time, my wife always says, don't guarantee and don't say every time. Whole lot of the damn time. When you raise taxes at the margin, after about a 1 year's delay, you get less tax revenue. You just do. People learn how to get around it. What I think, and so my great fear is that under the guise of political correctness, and doesn't it sound wonderful to say, we're raising taxes to balance the budget? Who's going to be opposed to that? I am. I'm opposed to raising taxes to balancing the budget. Cut taxes. My favorite example of this is in the early 1980s. New Zealand was one of my favorite countries, was in absolute dire straits. It had run enormous budget deficits every year. It had run enormous trade deficits every year. And after 10 years, the IMF had been there every single year and said, I find this amusing, you had a worse budget deficit this year than you had last year. Yes, we told you to raise the marginal tax rate last year to raise more tax revenue this year, but you got less again. But we're going to ask you again to raise the marginal tax rate. I think it was Einstein who said that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect to get a different result. Well, they raised taxes every single year, and they got less tax revenue every single year. A true genius, Roger Douglas, who later became Sir Roger Douglas, was the treasurer of New Zealand. He assumed the power after 10 years. And he said, this is very simple. We've been raising taxes for 10 years. We've been listening to the IMF for 10 years. And we've gotten less tax revenue every year, and our budget deficit has gotten worse. This doesn't take a genius. We're going to cut the marginal tax rate. Now, they had gotten the marginal, don't hold me to the numbers, but I'm going to be close. They had gotten the marginal tax rate to, I think 78%. Now, I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Yale. I just went to the University of Akron and North Carolina State. But I know that at 78% marginal tax rate, your propensity to work hard has probably been somewhat reduced. I could be wrong, but I think your propensity to work hard when they're going to take 78 cents of every dollar from you has been somewhat reduced. He said it doesn't take a genius. Let's cut it to 60. You'll never guess what happened. They took in more tax revenue. He cut it to 50. You're never going to guess what happened. He took in more tax revenue. He cut it to 40. He cut it to 30. He cut it to 20. He took in more tax revenue every single year, to the point that suddenly a country that 4 years previous had been bankrupt was now taking in so much tax revenue and paying off its outstanding debt that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand actually said, let's not cut them anymore, otherwise there won't be any more outstanding debts with which we can do open market operations. For those of you who understand Fed policy, that's a funny joke. He passed the baton. Now that New Zealand is now running an egregiously large budget surplus, and they had gotten the marginal tax rate to 17%. He passed the baton to Barbara Richardson, who became the treasurer of New Zealand. And on her first day in office was asked, are you going to cut the marginal tax rate again next year? And she said something truly remarkable. She said, no, because I can't spend what I'm taking in now. The Democrats never seem to get that. Okay? They never seem to understand that fact. So my big fear is that we will do something to try to balance the budget under the guise of political correctness, to raise taxes in order to alleviate the inequality of income. I am fully in favor of the most egregiously unequal levels of income imaginable. I stand foursquare in favor of preposterously unequal levels of income. This is the only country that celebrates inequality of income. I celebrate equality of opportunity, but I do not celebrate income equality. I celebrate income inequality. Hollywood, the left, they don't get that. So my fear, and concerning the budget circumstance, I fear raising taxes more than anything else. It characteristically has an egregiously ill effect. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
I have a question for you. So you have these two Chinese solar companies that recently defaulted. On their onshore corporate bonds.
I think that's a good thing.
Which is hitting copper prices.
Yes.
Taking it to the woodshed.
Yes.
Two-part question. Why? And if you're in the copper trade, how do you hedge yourself?
If you're in the copper trade and you're long, you got no hedge, you're dead right now. You're doomed. You got it. The only hedge you've got is prayer. Prayer will help you. It might
do less of that, which is not working.
Do less of that, which is not working. I applaud the fact that China has allowed two companies to finally default. I think it's a step in China's favor. I think they're doing the right thing. They're finally becoming more capitalist. They're finally allowing companies to fail. And that's the great thing about the United States. We let people fail here. That's a beautiful thing to let people fail.
Will that open the door for more?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. One of my oldest rules is there's never just one cockroach. There's a
Definitely not in New York.
no, there's lots of them there. So yeah, the fact that you've had the first two defaults, there's going to be hundreds of them. We'll get comfortable with the fact that companies have defaulted. Will that be difficult for China for a while? Of course. Is that detrimental? Is that deleterious to stock prices here in the United States for a while? Yeah, that news is just coming out, and that's weighing on share prices. Probably going to weigh seriously upon them for a couple days.
One more question, if I may.
You're my daughter. You get to do it.
Okay. So the weakness that we saw today,
Yeah.
Dow down 200. 200 plus at one point.
Yeah. No, it finished down 265, if I'm not mistaken. Something, two something. What's the difference?
Rough day.
Yeah.
That weakness,
Ratings were up.
yeah, ratings were very,
Ratings are
very
going to
good.
be up today, yeah.
That weakness is very different from, the big run-up we've had so far. 5-year anniversary bull market last week.
Yeah.
The weakness that we saw today, the weakness that we saw earlier this week, is that simply because in the U.S., we're done with earnings. All of our data is kind of
Yeah.
pretty dull at the moment.
Yeah.
We're down to a dull roar.
Yeah.
Is that simply worry from overseas, worry about China,
Yes.
worries
Yes.
about Ukraine,
Yes.
Russia?
Yes.
Is that finally what's weighing on equities
Yes.
here?
Yeah, probably.
How
so.
long? That will continue for a while?
Until it stops.
Thanks, Dad.
You knew that was coming.
Totally.
You knew that was coming. It'll continue to go down until it stops. Okay.
Okay.
You can always sell the burlap bag.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can always sell the burlap
Exactly.
bag, absolutely.
When
Yeah.
would you buy or would you buy Russian stocks?
I'm interested in buying Russian stocks right now. Okay, I'm interested in buying Russian stocks right now. I tend to buy one thing and sell something else. I'm a spreader. That's ex-floor traders tend to be spreaders. We tend to buy one thing. We buy corn, sell wheat. We buy cotton, sell. That's how we're trained. That's how we think. So I'm always looking to hedge things. But I'm actually thinking of buying Russian stocks and selling the U.S. stock market against it to hedge. I'm actually considering doing exactly that.
Would you buy the ETF?
Oh yeah, it's the only way to trade the Russian.
So you would buy the RSX flat out?
Yeah, I would buy, absolutely. It's the only way to trade the Russian stock market is to trade the ETF here in the United States. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure I'm ready to pull the trigger yet, but I'm getting really close.
Really?
Yeah, I'm getting really close.
In terms of emerging markets, would that be your first choice?
Yeah, Don Cox, who's one of the smartest guys in the business and an old mentor of mine, concerning emerging markets. Donald Cox had one of the greatest lines ever about emerging markets. He said, an emerging market is a market from which you cannot emerge in an emergency. And I thought that was just brilliant. And I remember Don saying that, so I don't trade, I really don't trade the emerging markets because things always look like an emergency and I'd like to emerge.
Quick question. Does aluminum and copper, do they still trade close to each other or not?
No, aluminum and copper have actually diverged in the past couple weeks, which is interesting. I'm long aluminum at this point, and I've been pretty heavily short of copper, although I covered my copper 2 days ago, and I felt like a genius, and then it fell another 15 cents and left an awful lot of money on the table. But aluminum and copper have seemed to diverge lately. I'm not sure whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not sure whether that's just that those of us who trade aluminum are stupid, or is there a difference in the aluminum? I don't know, but they have diverged. So lately I've been long Alcoa stock and short copper futures, okay? And it's worked. Yes, young lady.
What is your take on Bitcoin? Like, do you...
Bitcoin, avoid it. It is a scam. It is a scam of the worst and first order. It's where drug dealers and criminals abide. It has nothing. There's no merit to it. Avoid it. I trust I'm clear.
It seems like a scam.
It's a scam. It is, and it's better than what's Ackman's scam that he's after?
Herbalife?
Herbalife. Yeah, Bitcoin is worse than Herbalife. Okay? Stay away from it.
So do you believe that if two countries trade and even if the trade balance is unequal, do you believe that they both still benefit?
Absolutely. If two countries trade, even if one has an imbalance with the other, are both countries benefiting? You betcha, of course they are. Absolutely. Trade is not a sum-zero game. Trade is a zero-plus game. If for no other reason, countries who trade with each other tend to avoid going to war with one another. Mm-hmm. If there's no other reason, that's a reason to support free trade.
I was just wondering because I've got quite a few friends and professors that thought about this. And I just wanted to get your take on it.
That you had quite a few friends and professors who what?
Thought otherwise.
They're wrong. It's that simple. Anything else? Anybody got a score of the NC State? It's still halftime? Okay, thanks.
So should we build a pipeline?
Should we build the XL pipeline? Absolutely, but we've waited first of all, we've treated, the question is, should we build the XL pipeline? Absolutely. no question. But the president has done such a bad job delaying it that we've already gone around the XL pipeline. Companies have learned how to use the rail system to actually move crude oil more efficiently than the pipeline can. The problem with a pipeline, so it should be built even if it's not going to be used much. The problem with the pipeline is it moves crude oil from Athabasca to Cushing and then south to the Gulf of Mexico. Rail cars can pick it up in Athabasca and move it to Peoria, can move it to Billings, Montana, can move it to Halifax, Nova Scotia, can move it to Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, can move it to Norfolk, Virginia, can move it perfectly and they've learned how to do it.
As an investor, would you be more interested in the shippers?
Oh yeah, I mean, give me rails and shippers anytime, because we've gone around. We've actually made the XL pipeline unneeded. We should still build it, because if we don't, the eco-radicals win. Okay? I trust I'm clear. Okay?
Have you ever thought about running for office at all?
No. No, because I would get no votes. Yeah, I would get no. How can somebody stand in front of you and say he proclaims the brilliance of income inequality? The media would cut that person to absolute ribbons.
They would.
Wouldn't have a chance.
They would.
Most of us are probably used to hearing gloom and doom about our future.
Yes.
Most of the time,
You're wrong.
you have the opposite.
I am so unbelievably optimistic about what you're facing in the next 25 to 40 years. The changes that have taken place, that are going on right now, are changing the nature of this country completely. And the sad thing is, the media is not telling you this. The media is. Hey. Well, you were the only Republican in Lawrence, Kansas. So
I'm the only Republican in New York City.
in New York City, yeah. I mean, nobody's telling you that we grow preposterously more wheat and corn and soybeans than we did 15 years ago and we're doing it with less fertilizer. Nobody's telling you that. You're only now beginning to hear about fracking, but all you're hearing about, Hollywood's doing movies about how bad fracking is. Okay, there's nobody out there applauding fracking. We should applaud, but that's not going to. That works here, but it doesn't work running for office.
Right.
Okay. I guess we're done. Dean, thank you.
Don't go, we got some gifts for you. Don't go, we got some gifts for you.
Thank you
Don't
so
go.
much.
We got some gifts from you.
We get stuff.
You get stuff.
We get stuff.
Yeah. They're in
Yay.
burlap bags in these boxes.
Oh, excellent. Stuff.
Just what I wanted.
Take a turn toward the
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Doc.
to the camera? Oh, okay.
Are we in this one too, or?
Or no, move.
I can
Get
see
out.
thumbs up.
Beautiful.
All right, don't go. We got some else.
We
got
stuff?
more stuff.
Oh, man.
Back over here.
Yay.
This is good stuff.
Is this us?
Picture, we go. There we go.
More stuff.
Okay, good.
Baseballs.
Courtney, we've got a special gift for you. Boy, your talk was even better than what we talked about.
Aw, thank you.
It was terrific.
Thank you.
Just spot on. Inspirational. So we have some alum stuff for you.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a true pleasure. Thank you.
Dennis, I've got a special guy that's actually going to present this to you. This is Kerry Washington, and he's on our Longwood Lancer baseball team.
Oh, very good.
This is the actual home run that went over the wall, and the reason we're giving this to you, and it's inscribed because today you hit a home run for us.
Aw.
Oh, well, thank you, my friend.
sweet.
Well done.
Thank you so much, doll.
Are we getting a picture? Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Well, was
Fantastic.
that fun?
Thank you.
In addition to a lot of good information, was that fun? Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Oh, happy to do it. Thanks. Thanks, buddy.
See you guys. Thank you so much.